Ah, it's done. Putting it together has been a hell of a ride. Hi there, you scale model kit lovers, and welcome in my super tiny shed. Today is all about a true restoration, and not a staged one, of a neglected model car that I found in a miniature park in the Netherlands. I visited Madurodam, that's how the park is called, for the first time in 1986. Here, together with my sister. The model that I will restore is an Alfa Romeo Brera, and I'm going to make it just like the real full-size car that I happen to own myself. A project well out of my comfort zone. Will I succeed? Last October, my girlfriend and I visited Madurodam, one of the most iconic and detailed open-air miniature parks in the world. It had been almost 40 years since my last visit, and wow, what an incredible place it still is. The park features over 400 miniature buildings across 1.8 hectares, each one representing real landmarks from all over the Netherlands. Honestly, once you've been here, it feels like you've seen the whole country in one afternoon. Many of the vehicles actually move, and in some areas you can even control things yourself. Just before we were about to leave the park, I spotted this poor, weather-beaten little car. And not just any car, it was the exact same model as my real one, an Alfa Romeo Brera. When we got home, I immediately wrote to Madurodam to offer a free restoration of the model. And guess what? They said yes! Oh, wow. You have to remember, these are just regular off-the-shelf die-cast models, the kind you can buy in a store. But here, they spend all year outside, through rain, wind, storms and even hail. You can imagine what that does to a model car. Corrosion, fading colors, peeling paint. But what really worried me were the windows. They were completely discolored and damaged. How on earth was I going to fix those? So first things first. I decided to open up the model to see what it looked like inside. Basically a damage inspection. Could I actually repair what I was seeing? Since I was doing this restoration for free from Madurodam, I reached out to several companies asking for help and materials at no cost. I could keep expenses down, and it also gave me a chance to show you some techniques and products you might not have seen before. Look at the axis. It's really heavily corroded. What's this? Ew, some more spider eggs here. Not all of the parts were screwed together. Some had to be cut loose with a rotary tool, though that was easier than expected. Still, it was unbelievable how filthy the model was inside. There was sand and grime literally everywhere. Someone who heard about my project said, "Why don't you make a little figure of yourself to place inside the car?" Brilliant idea. Okay, I'm going to be scanned. It's going to be exciting. So Renee from Double Me was willing to help me and scan me using her amazing full-body 3D scanner. With a super high-end Mimaki printer, she printed the figure in resin. A few weeks later it arrived. Ah, how nice. Thank you for your order. Very well packed. Oh, that's me. Oh, this is so exciting. First this. And from a short distance, the resemblance was uncanny. Double Me is located near Amsterdam Schiphol Airport. Oh, how nice. Look at this, my jacket. So if you ever want a cool mini version of yourself, go see her. You'll find a link in the video description below. Of course, the double thumbs up. Oh, thank you very much, Double Me. As I continued dismantling the model, I came across some strange droppings. Looks like a few tiny creatures had been living here. Every single part had been affected by the weather, even the interior pieces. That was going to take a lot of work. The Scudetto shield, that triangular Alfa Romeo grille and all the chrome was completely gone. The windows were, honestly, beyond repair. They'd been damaged so much by UV exposure that the plastic had turned brittle. It would shatter with the slightest touch. I'd have to make new ones. But how? The headlights had turned yellow and the taillights had lost all the red color. It was crazy to see how much dirt had found its way into every corner of the car. After about an hour of unscrewing and milling, I finally had all the parts separated. So, I decided to start right away with the hardest challenge. The windows. My plan was to eventually vacuum form the new ones, something I had never tried before. So this would definitely be a case of learning by doing. I started by trying to make a clay mold, something I could later use to shape clear plastic over the new windows. But it turned out to be a lot trickier than I thought. I just couldn't get the clay to fill out the window shape properly, which meant I couldn't form a clean mold around it. So I switched to a different method. I built a mold box around the windows, kind of like the formwork you'd see in large-scale concrete construction.
It's so hot.
I actually have a background in construction, so I guess my brain naturally goes to those kind of solutions. But more on that later. First, I wanted to take care of another dirty job, stripping the old paint off the car. For that, I used paint remover from Zero Paints. They also sponsored this project and they sent me a bunch of other great stuff, which I will show you later on. You need to apply the stripper nice and thick and then it's basically a waiting game. About 2 hours seems to give the best results. I used a variety of tools to scrape the paint off. It's quite a job, but it's also super satisfying to see the bare metal and have a fresh start. Well, I say a fresh start, but it wasn't exactly fresh. The front badge, made of plastic, had partially melted from the paint remover. And when you look at how much oxidation was on the Zamak body, that wasn't very encouraging either. Die-cast cars are made from Zamak, an alloy of zinc, aluminum, magnesium and copper. I suspect the park's location, just about 2 kilometers from the North Sea, played a big role in the corrosion, with all that salty air constantly hitting it. The antenna was already broken and I wanted to make a stronger replacement. So at first I used galvanized steel wire soldered directly onto the body, but that turned out to be not sturdy enough.
Oh shoot.
Then I tried CA glue and later reinforced it with epoxy, which is much stronger. One of the side mirrors was missing and the one that was still there was totally done for. So I sculpted new ones using milliput, a 2-part epoxy putty that can handle outdoor weather. I smoothed the surface with a bit of water and even rebuilt the front emblem with milliput too. It was basically miniature clay modeling for beginners. After plenty of sanding and shaping, the mirror started looking surprisingly realistic. I even added a little blob of solder to the antenna tip so it wouldn't be too sharp. The rear axle had also been badly corroded, so I gave it a thick coat of primer for protection. The tires had become really stiff and brittle after years of weather exposure, so they were hard to remove from the rims.
Wow. This is sturdy. Finally.
Bit by bit, I went through every small component, cleaning and repairing them one by one. A few months ago I started using a new airbrush from a brand that was new to me, Gallery, and honestly, it's been a revelation. The pistol style airbrush feels great in the hand and sprays beautifully. I used to work with a very good Harder and Steenbeck airbrush, but honestly, since I got this one, I haven't touched it again. I can highly recommend it, and with a special 10% discount, it's a really great deal. You'll find the link in the video description. For this project, the paint came from Zero Paints in the UK. They specialize in automotive solvent-based paints for scale models and mix any real car color you can think of. You can buy them at heroboy.com. See the link in the video description. For the primer, it's best to spray it using a 0.5mm nozzle. That gives you the best coverage and control. I'd forgotten to widen the Italian license plate holder to fit a Dutch plate, so I quickly fixed that along the way, just like the antenna, which was just way too high. After some sanding, I applied a second primer layer and then I sanded it down to prepare it for the base color. So Zero Paints offers an incredible range of automotive colors, and for me they specially mixed Bianco Ghiaccio, the exact same color as my real Alfa Romeo. Once the base coat was done, it was time for the 2K clear coat from Zero Paints. With this stuff you really need to pay attention to the mixing ratios and use separate pipettes to measure each component accurately. I had the car body screwed onto an empty pasta jar as a stand. Halfway through spraying I noticed the Alpha badge had come loose. Annoying, but luckily I managed to fix it later on. Applying the clear coat went really smoothly. You start carefully with a light mist coat and then gradually build up to wetter, glossier layers. Working with the Gallery Swallowtail SD is a joy. The pistol grip style feels so comfortable. You can spray for hours without getting a cramp in your hand. I cleaned the interior with alcohol and removed the remains of old stickers. The gear stick was missing, so I needed to make a new one, kind of like I did with the antenna earlier. I'll show you later how that turned out. I also marked the exact positions for the decals I wanted to apply. In my real car, the carbon fiber trim is currently only on the steering wheel, but I'm planning to extend it to the center console. So I wanted to go ahead and add that look to the Model 2. Since the interior had also suffered badly from years of weather exposure, I decided to repaint the entire thing. Zero Paints gave me a small bottle that matched my car's interior color really well, and it sprays beautifully straight out of the bottle. With just 3 coats, you already get great coverage. Some of the smaller parts I painted by hand, partly to save time, but also because it's just fun to do. In Adobe Illustrator I designed all the decals myself, based on the masking outlines I had drawn earlier. It's basically just a matter of tracing over your references, and the scale automatically ends up perfect. I photographed the speedometer and tachometer, then digitally cropped and cut them to size. So yes, I make all the decals myself, and if you do that, you'll quickly learn how essential white printing is. The German company Ghost provided me with a white toner cartridge, and it's brilliant. You simply swap out your black cartridge for the white one, and everything you've drawn in black prints out white instead. The coverage of the white toner is incredibly good, and I can highly recommend that toner if you want to create your own decals. They also sell excellent decal paper, by the way, and you'll find a link to their website in the video description. Adding the license plates instantly made the model look like a real car again. As I slowly added more and more of my own decals, the car started to look more and more like my actual one. Sticking a white triangle on a white background might seem a bit pointless, but on the real car, the background of this badge is actually a different shade of white than the body. And did you know this symbol is actually an Alfa Romeo good luck charm since 1923? Every beautiful sculpture deserves a nameplate. The Brera was designed by none other than Giorgetto Giugiaro. Okay, so the mirror decals are a bit cartoonish, but real mirror foil would never survive outdoors, so that just wasn't an option. By now, I've gotten pretty good at punching out tiny round decals. It's almost second nature. For the instrument cluster, I designed the decals with a bit of depth, just like the real dashboard. I discovered that carbon decals are practically invisible if they don't have a white background behind them. I could have printed that, of course, but I was in a hurry, so I just painted it with primer instead. And immediately you can see the coverage is so much better. Luckily, the car body itself is white, which makes the decal stand out beautifully. If it hadn't been, you'd need to print on white decal paper or, for a super clean result, place a printed white decal layer underneath your main decal. These are the smallest decals I've ever applied. It's the Quadrifoglio Verde emblem from Alfa Romeo, which I also have on my real steering wheel. First, I placed a tiny little white triangle, and then on top of that, the green 4-leaf clover, which must be made of what? 6 molecules in total?
He's in the white triangle. Happy.
I painted the red release buttons of the seatbelt buckles and then made a new gear knob out of evergreen plastic. That material I actually dared to use in the interior as it would not face direct weather influences. Using a beading punch, I stamped a small cupped circle of plastic that became the top of the gear knob. Once installed and painted, it looked properly sporty again. The white circles represent the silver trim rings around the speakers. And if you look closely at the smaller gauges, you can really see how crisp and bright the white prints from Ghost White Toner are. Fantastic stuff! Then it was time to polish the body. Zero Paint sent me a great polishing set for that. You work your way up from coarse to fine, and with this yogurt-like cream, because that's exactly what it looks like, you can buff the car to a high gloss shine. The clear coat is tough enough to handle it, but of course you have to be careful not to rub through the paint. That's why I did it by hand and not with the machine. Some parts still needed to be painted black. I didn't dare spray everything, too much risk of overspray, so I ended up hand painting most of it, except for the triangle next to the mirror. The headlight lenses had turned yellow over time, but after slightly sanding them, they became clear again. Later, I coated them with a clear lacquer for extra UV protection. As for the remaining chrome, it was beyond saving, so it all had to go. I used oven cleaner, sprayed it into a jar, and once the foam settled into a liquid, stripped the chrome layer off in about an hour. For me, the Tamiya lacquer retarder was a real discovery when brushing on lacquer paints, especially metallic colors. Normally, those are a pain to apply smoothly by brush, but with this retarder, paint flows beautifully and doesn't drag or streak anymore. And just look at those rear lights! That transparent red makes them look like tiny jewels. It was so much fun adding all those small details by hand. Take the red brake calipers for example. On the real car, the front ones have the written Alfa Romeo logo, and thanks to white decals printed with Ghost White toner, I could recreate that perfectly. Long live Ghost White toner! The next part is a little painful to watch. Drilling into the back of your own miniature figure, it just gives you phantom pain. And that's before you even start inserting the metal wire. It's practically voodoo! But the little guy needed protection. The amazing print from Double Me is made of resin, which is vulnerable to UV light and rain. So I added several coats of semi-gloss varnish to help shield it from the elements. I also sprayed all the loose interior and exterior parts with semi-gloss clear coat, partly to seal the decals and partly to protect the Zero Paint's base coat. Just a few more details to paint, like the brake light in the rear spoiler, and then I could finally move on to the hardest part of this entire project, recreating the windows. To make the mold box sturdier and cleaner, I used epoxy glue, but that also meant I'd have no second chances later. If it went wrong, the original windows would be ruined for good. One of the side windows had a broken corner, which I had to fill in before I could start molding. This time I wanted to try plaster, since it flows into every little space much better than clay does. Of course, you need a release agent to separate the mold from the countermold. I used fiber-reinforced plaster to give the molds extra strength, since I was a bit worried about the pressure from the vacuum forming machine. When I finally removed the molds, I discovered lots of tiny air bubbles in the plaster, probably caused by the release agent itself. And since those bubbles would show up when vacuum forming the glass, I had to smooth everything out. I made a thin paste of plaster and spread it over the surface with my fingers. Then sanded everything down again. In the end, I was advised to use epoxy resin to make the molds truly smooth. Only problem? Plaster absorbs epoxy like a sponge, so I had to coat it at least 3 times. After each layer dried, I sanded it down as smooth as possible, but honestly, I still wasn't sure if it would be good enough. I asked Marcel from First Model to help me out. He's got a whole workshop full of machines, and in the back corner stood an old vacuum forming machine. Once the plastic sheet is hot enough, you pull a vacuum to shape it tightly over the molds. The vacuum part worked fine, but getting the molds out afterwards was another story. It was tricky, but eventually we managed. Unfortunately, the results weren't good enough. Not because of Marcel's machine, but because my molds simply weren't smooth and precise enough. So sadly enough, these windows were not usable. And even worse, the old windows and the counter molds were all destroyed in the process. There was no turning back. I had to use my backup model, one I had bought on eBay just in case, as a donor. It felt like a shame and honestly a bit of a defeat. But it was the only way forward to get a successful result. To give the new windows extra UV protection, I learned from the Madurodam team that, left untreated, they would turn yellow within a year. So I decided to spray them with Zero Paint's 2K clear coat for added protection. After that, I polished all the windows to a nice shine. Under my real car I have different wheels than the scale model originally had. On cals3d.com I found a perfect design and my colleague Yvo kindly printed some test versions for me. Thanks Yvo! The final wheels were printed by Vormz, a professional 3D printing company using SLS, selective layer sintering. That's a process where a laser melts nylon powder layer by layer, creating a strong and weather-resistant print. Vormz can help you with all your 3D printing needs, by the way. You'll find them in the video description. I painted the new wheels using zero paints matched exactly to the color of my real rims. They turned out amazing, thank you Vormz! And then I finally had all the parts ready. Not everything went smoothly and assembly was definitely not a walk in the park. For gluing everything together I used epoxy again in a fast setting version. After just a few minutes it starts forming glue strings and if you're not careful you can easily ruin your model. But wow! It's such a satisfying moment when everything finally comes together. That's one of the best parts of this hobby, seeing all those separate little pieces unite into one finished model. Of course, you always hope assembly goes smoothly, but in my case it really didn't. There was a lot of swearing and praying involved because some things just refused to fit. At one point I actually had to hammer the tailgate into its hinge slot using a screwdriver as a chisel. That was a horror moment and I hope I never have to do that again. It is just satisfying to push the tires around the new rims, just like putting together the dashboard. It slotted in fine into the diecast body. Luckily, mounting the brakes was easy. The holes in the wheels were a bit too wide, but the epoxy filled the gaps perfectly. You just have to hold it in place for a while. Gluing in the windows was, of course, a tense moment. This was not a stage where I wanted to mess anything up. It took a lot of pressing, pushing, checking, clicking and shoving. But it all went smoothly and soon the model could finally be screwed shut again. Next challenge, getting miniature me at 1 in 24th scale inside the car. At first I was careful and tried it from multiple angles. Hear my anxious sighs and moans. And guess what? It fit perfectly. The print couldn't have been a millimeter bigger.
Oh, it's done. Oh, putting it together has been a hell of a ride. My word, did I have some stress here. But it's done!
This turned out to be such a fun project and I want to give a huge thanks to all my sponsors. Double Me for the beautiful figure, Gallery for the brilliant airbrush, Zero Paints for the great paints and clear coats, Ghost for the awesome white toner, Yvo for the fine prototype wheel prints, Vormz for the final perfect 3D printed rims, and First Model for being so kind to help me with the vacuum forming attempt. And last but not least, Madurodam for letting me take on this crazy project and being so helpful and kind. Thank you Mirjam, Lotte and Mitchell. I couldn't have done it without you all. And then it was finally time to place the model back in Madurodam. So exciting! Together with my girlfriend Judith, who filmed all these shots, we were warmly welcomed to the park by Lotte. Mitchell carefully inspected the car. Was it any good? I think he was pretty happy with it. After that we got a behind the scenes tour which was absolutely amazing. The workshop is packed with machines, tools and workbenches. There's so much going on everywhere. It's incredibly inspiring to see. There's an enormous amount of craftsmanship and engineering involved in building and maintaining a park like Madurodam, especially with so many moving parts and technical details. After the tour I got to choose a spot where my car would be placed. Since I live in the city of Groningen, I wanted it to be near a building from my city. I found the perfect spot, right by the Goudkantoor or Gold Office, next to a little miniature market square. The car was firmly secured and now it's there, shining proudly in the sun. I'd love to invite you all to visit Madurodam and have a peek at my car. But above all, take your time to explore the entire park. If you're a miniature enthusiast, you'll absolutely love it here. And if you leave a comment under this video and follow Madurodam on YouTube, you'll automatically enter a giveaway. One lucky winner will receive 2 free tickets to visit the park. So go ahead and join in!